Hey guys, good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. And it's crazy. I have such a small platform, and to be honest, I don't even be knowing if it's like real people on my platform, like here on YouTube, or if it's just like bots. I mean, most people don't really interact or engage, and my views are pretty low for most of the content that I do create, which I'm pretty content with that. So today I am just kind of coming on to talk a little bit about fame and how it corrodes the human spirit. And I just kind of want to talk a little bit about being a person who even has such a small platform, and just how dismantling that can be to engage with strangers. So I think in part we try to do this thing where we're like, well, the internet trolls and things like that. But I think any one person, right, is just not created to constantly be berated, to constantly have your thoughts and your ideas, even your sense of self. Maybe you are someone who's a little bit more outgoing, and we can kind of touch on the celebrity news just on a more sociological scale here, celebrity pregnant and things like that by her boyfriend and everything. And I don't want to say names. I don't know why, but I'm just kind of not going there. And it's like you see this person and people, first of all, this is one of the things too, right? When relationships go sour or when a celebrity makes a mistake, there's all this backlash. And I think it really comes from reckoning with the reality that money and success is so hollow. Right? It doesn't mean anything. And that's one of the trade-offs, right? Like if you want to be someone who's highly compensated, you're going to be criticized much harsher than other people, not because of necessarily what you have, but I think in part, maybe on some fundamental psychological, animalistic level, we can reckon with the fact that, everything that this person is living is a myth, right? This person is being praised because, oh, they're so successful, they have all this money. But the reality is that that means nothing, right? And it's funny too, when you talk to people about children, like you speak to a lot of women today who may be influenced by the media, which I don't want to say that from a critical standpoint. I'm saying that from the standpoint of guys, if you've never experienced something, all you're going to have is your own biases and, collection of thoughts from other people, what they're saying. And a lot of people most commonly believe that, in order to have a child, financial provision is the main thing. And yes, having financial provision can absolutely create comfort. But I'm here to tell you that that's not the main thing. And so when you have the celebrity who makes really bad choices, right, and who has kind of put on this pedestal just because they're successful, right, this person ends up getting so much backlash. And it really kind of comes from the reality that this was someone who should have never been praised in the first place, right? This was someone who was really unworthy of this level of influence. But because we think, oh, success is the pinnacle, right? Success is the pinnacle within our society. This person gets all this praise and they get all this influence, and they have this ability to be the role model, and they're, being called to go to the schools and perform at the pep rallies for the children. And so in part, there's a part of me that's obviously compassionate, concerning celebrities and, things like that, because I understand that people are people. But then there's also that part of me that feels like people who have to reckon with, really the consequences of living a life that they should have never been living in the first place. Right. And so if you want to kind of talk about it from an African-American standpoint, this is probably one of the more detrimental effects of fame for Black people, especially within our society. Right. America and the systems behind the fame, right? The manager, the CEO of the record company, they take some of the most ignorant African-American people and they put them on the pedestal. They give them all this money, which is really just a bunch of liabilities, right? A bunch of liabilities, a bunch of debt, right? Because that's literally what success is for a lot of these people. For a lot of famous people, it's just a bunch of debt, and they put them on the back burner. They put them on these platforms, they give them all this money, but they know that they're going to garner this level of influence, right? And they're just not ready for it. And they don't care, right? They don't care about the messages that they're pushing. And the people who, sign the contracts, right? The celebrities who sign the contracts, who agree to, really do this minstrel show, this minstrel show for America, right? At the cost of the African Americans who are looking up to them, right? When they start to receive the backlash, it's really hard to kind of feel sympathetic for these people because they are absolutely aware of what it is that they're doing. Now, of course, there are loopholes and people are absolutely taken advantage of. Like I said, if you're taking people who come from absolutely nothing, most people can be bought, right? Most people can be bought. That's just what it is, right? Because when you're young, and I'll say young in the sense that like you're young minded, you think that money is everything, right? When you're young, all you just feel like if you could just get some money, you're going to be okay, but when you get older, you start to realize like, first of all, there's beauty in the ordinary, right? Life is so beautiful, and it is really to be lived in this state of being average. You know what I mean? Because most people are average, right? You talk about being average. Well, yeah, I mean, you can be exceptional in your own way. We all have the ability to, steward our gifts and kind of like build upon our talents and things like that. But at the end of the day, yes, most of us are ordinary. Like, we're not the smartest in the room. Like, even for myself, as much as I love reading and I love learning and all these different things, like I said, I create this platform because it's really just about creative expression to me. And I'll be kind of touching on this here in a moment. I don't put myself out there like I'm this pseudo intellectual and I just know everything above everybody and I'm so above it all and propaganda can't get to me. It's never influenced my life. Like, that's not who I am, and I've never put myself up there on that pedestal and I don't want to be, and so I'm sitting here today, I'm listening to the celebrity news and kind of reckoning with the reality that like, this is just a woman who comes from nothing, who, is like every other woman in the city, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, who's had a really hard life, who's had trauma, right? Who's really struggling with a lot and who unfortunately, made different choices. And it's not to really say this person made bad choices or to judge this person. Cause I think at the end of the day, one thing we all can reckon with is the fact that, just because we don't have a platform doesn't mean that we too don't have skeletons in our closet or, that we too haven't made mistakes, So that's not really the angle that I'm coming from. But the angle that I'm coming from is to say, fame and success puts these people in these bubbles, these really beautiful, bubbles. And there's all this glitter and there's all this stuff. When the reality is that this girl, her psychology, who she is as a person, you take away all that money and all that debt. Okay. This person is no different than the girl down the street. And the problem with that is that y'all don't listen. Y'all wouldn't be looking at the girl down the street like you would the celebrity, right? Because the celebrity, you're like, oh, this person's successful. I'm going to give them my time. I'm going to, you know what I mean? But the girl down the street, you're going to be looking at her like, she got all these kids. She's wilding out. You know what I mean? Like you're going to see her from a different perspective. And so it's really interesting to kind of just see how, success blinds us in so many different ways, and it's really, really sad. I think we're getting to a point where I just kind of feel like, people can say what they want about the internet. I understand it. It's a lot of information out there, but I just think for persons who, may not even be highly educated in the traditional sense, right? Going through institutionalized learning, we're just in a day and age now where you actually do have the opportunity to make better decisions, And so if you are someone, you're not famous, you can start making better decisions because we're living in a day and age where the information is readily available. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I just kind of want to leave that there. But concerning myself, I've had a very difficult time, even having just a very small platform. I think in part because I do feel like I show up pretty authentically. I am a woman. Okay. I know you may not, because I'm Black, it may be different, but I am a woman, so I think I get a lot of slack for the content that I create, and I don't even consider myself a content creator. Again, this is just a hobby for me. I feel like I have things to say. Again, I just like teaching and learning, and it's more of a little safe place for me. It's kind of like a part of socialization in part. And also, I tell you guys this all the time. My early experiences with the internet was just being on here, dilly-dallying, for giggles. It was never anything that I engaged with this attitude or this belief that I can become a millionaire. I never engaged with the internet like that. That was never my foundational beliefs in my engagement with the internet, my early experiences with the internet. And so even though people like to try to group us all in together, young people, I'm not young. You know what I mean? It's funny. It's like I talk to people all the time and they're like, oh, you're still so young. I'm 28 years old. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, and it's crazy because I think in part, I don't know what it is. there's something about culture today, right? Where a lot of people, one, we know American society really prioritizes youth. And I would even say that most people covet youth and vitality. And it's not to say that it's not something to covet and it's not something to, really bask in and sit with. But I think at the same time, it's always a little, I don't know if it's frustrating, but it's disorienting, I'll definitely say. And it's definitely a bit of a dissonance there when people try to tell me like, well, you're still so young. And it's like, I'm not though. Like, yes, I have more life ahead of me. Absolutely. But I think when you start talking about youth, I'm not 21. You know what I mean? I'm not 20. And I think even looking back, hindsight, if I can be honest, 23, 21, yeah, sure, it's young, but not really. You're an adult now. You know what I mean? And I do think in part, this idea to see young people and hold them with so much reverence, I don't know if that's hindering or not. I'm starting to think it's very debilitating. You have 25-year-olds and people are like, well, you're still so young. You can figure it out. And it's like, okay, yeah, but what are you doing today? You know what I mean? You have a lot of people and it's like, oh, well, they live at home and I'm not here to speak on any one particular situation. I think that there's a lot of different nuance. There's so much complexity that goes into people staying at home later. This is not to really, I'm not here to critique that aspect of anybody's life or anybody's journey. But what I am here to say is that, this idea that oh, you're young, you're so young, there's almost this obsession that's completely blinding to the fact that we are adults. You know what I mean? I'm a grown woman, yeah, I'm young, but I really don't like to be regarded in that sense. I just don't. I don't, because I don't feel like I'm not a child. You know what I mean? I think we sometimes inflate youth with this childlike sense of irresponsibility. And that's kind of what takes place today. And I don't really know what that does for anybody's life, or anybody's development. Like I said, I'm not here to, be like, oh, I'm 65. No, you know what I mean? I'm 28. I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful. I think I have, like I said, there's a lot more, ahead for me. But at the same time, I'm not 18 years old. I'm not a 16-year-old girl. You know what I mean? I'm not 21. I'm 28 years old. And I just think if we can kind of start to, carry ourselves with a little bit more weight. I don't know. I just think that would do a lot for our lives, really garnering a sense of responsibility, because that's what adulthood is about. Adulthood is about responsibility. And I don't come at anybody who is still young and you maybe don't have certain responsibility. That's fine. But I just think that this idea of youth and this preservation of it, because you have this younger generation and they are being presented with new technological opportunities that will allow them to, garner influence in opportunity and, income. It's great. I love that for that generation. We're witnessing something that is the first time thing, you know what I mean? And here shortly, this will be an era, right? The technological advancement era. And, we'll be looking at documentaries and things like that in the future. And that's great. You know what I mean? I think that it's pretty cool. We can definitely say we are evolving as human beings, right? There's been a lot of innovation within this generation. Things are different. And I absolutely love that for them. But I'm not young. I'm not young in the sense that I'm not a child, you know what I mean? And I don't know. It's just really unfortunate today because I just don't think that you can really meet people and engage with adults. I think that a lot of Americans really struggle with a sense of emotional stuntedness. And I think in part that comes from the overglorification of youth, the simplification of youth, you know what I mean? Or I'm sorry, the simplification and flattening of adulthood, which is to acquire responsibilities, which is to become someone who's responsible, you know what I mean? Which is to become someone who can kind of withstand a little bit of pressure and just, I don't know, just kind of make something of yourself. And I just feel like we've lost that. But I was saying that I struggled on this platform, and I'm going to be wrapping up here shortly. It's because I think, one, doing this work of kind of commentary, I feel like as a Black woman, I do think I struggle a lot in this space because, one, you're talking about academia, then you're also hitting on topics like philosophy and, a diverse body of literature. And a lot of the comments and the things that I'm typically dealing with is a lot of people challenging my intelligence, and I do think a lot of these people, I mean, I don't know, but I feel like a lot of them are white men, white men and white women. But I also don't necessarily know because people are on here and it's you don't see their avatar. But yeah, it's very difficult being in this space. I made a video yesterday, just kind of wanted to be a little bit more expressive and share some more lighthearted content because I do just have to deal with even this, like I said, this platform is so freaking small, and I'm still dealing with that type of stuff, So I don't know, y'all. I guess my overall premise and what I really want to kind of conclude this this podcast by saying is that I don't think that fame or influence of any means is worth it. I don't think it's worth it, like, at all. I am someone who lives a very beautiful life. I love the life that I'm building. My life is very beautiful. I'm very happy in my life, despite whatever, my personal challenges. I love my life. I like where I am and what I'm doing and what I'm building, and it may not be much, it may not whatever, but I can't minimize the fact that I love my life, And so when I come online and I'm being met with so much negativity, even on such a small platform, or I'm feeling like if I'm showing certain aspects of myself, which I now realize that I kind of want to just keep this channel focused on books and literature, it's very hard. You know what I mean? It's very hard being persons of influence, having content that people can view and comment on. It's very difficult. And I guess I'm more so, again, adding to that conclusion, I just don't think that we were ever created to be famous or to have platforms, And like I said, I engage with the internet like I have always engaged with the internet, even from a very young person, when I was a child, 13, when I was young, and I just would come online to dilly dally. You know what I mean? It wasn't really a big thing, there were hateful people on the internet, I think, as always, but I don't think that it was so deeply personal because, if you're doing a dance or a popular challenge, or you're just, sharing this with your local friends and the people in your community or the people in your high school, you're not being exposed to racist, or maybe, they may be racist, but you're not being exposed to, just all the criticism that kind of comes from being online. So I just say all that to say, I don't think that it's worth it. And that is my conclusion. I'm going to go now. But yeah, I just wanted to come on and say, I don't think that having a platform at all is worth it. I think for some people who maybe do create more lighthearted content and maybe have communities where there's just women or whatever the case may be, maybe it's a little bit different. I do think that I look at their comment sections, the chit chat videos, the soft life, the aesthetics, the day in a life, they have completely different comment sections versus people who do the work of commentary, or even just like someone myself. I would even consider myself more of a teacher rather than a commentator. It's just completely different, And so I do think there is wisdom in not many people becoming teachers. I know that that's Bible, but although I'm not on here, ministering in any means, I just think that the level of criticism and the weight that people carry who have platforms and the people who have fame, I just don't think it's worth it. And I don't think it ever was worth it. Peace.